You are watching The Next Step, and my name is Dave Wass. My guest today is Robert Bernstein. The name of the program is Robert Bernstein Speaks Out. That's right. On this program, this series of programs, we want people who are not afraid to speak out and don't have to go along with the big crowd. This guy is a loner. I know he's a loner because I'm a loner, okay? Two loners. Are we alone? I guess we are, okay? He's also a nanotechnology design engineer, whatever that is. And he's also very active in the Sierra Club board. He's going to be talking about the overview of challenges overlooked and ways to address them and how to think strategically. Now, if you're really confused by all that, so am I, okay? There's one thing that he did say in our pre-conversation that will start this series of exchanges. He told me, gave me a term, said there are things called 90% issues. And so let's start with that. Robert Bernstein, what is a 90% issue?
Okay, well, let me back up a bit,
okay.
And let's just talk about strategic thinking in general.
Okay.
I started doing activism back in the 70s and 80s, and what we would do is, we would organize rallies and marches, and we'd bring speakers, and we'd do cultural events, and do direct aid projects, and you do those things because those are the things that people have done before, and that's what activists do. But in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, yeah, but what is the strategy? And in fact, there was a guy who used to come to our meetings who used to say, you better have a strategy or you're not going to ever achieve anything. And my answer always was, I don't have a strategy. I'm just doing this until I can figure out a good strategy. But
that's an honest statement.
It was an honest statement. But on the other hand, I was always looking for strategies, and a lot of the activism that we were doing back then, well, in the 80s, Reagan was murdering people in Central America, and so...
you were involved in commenting on that.
We had a group called the Central America Response Network, and we had these really dedicated volunteers, and I was one of them, And so, as I say, we put on an enormous number of events in the 80s, and we would bring like ex-CIA people to come speak about all these atrocities and things that were going on behind the scenes and so on. And it was very educational, but the question was, what are we going to do to end this? And so I started looking at, what are the underlying forces that drive what's going on?
What's the big picture here?
Right, and so one of the things is, well, what are the economic forces behind this? And so you look at the militarism and you say, what drives the militarism? And what drives the militarism in part is, you can say, well, there's these big corporations that profit from the militarism. But on the other hand, you have thousands of rank and file workers who also profit from the militarism. It's their job. And so I came across this guy, Seymour Melman, who was an industrial engineer at Columbia University, and he had written a book about the permanent war economy, and he had written about the concept of economic conversion and how we could do a lot to end the militarist culture if we could convert our economy from making bombs to making things that people actually need. But the problem with that is that we already are making all the stuff that we need. In fact, in a way, we're actually overproducing what we need. And so that was how I got interested.
In those days we were.
Well, I'm saying the world is. I mean,
okay.
We don't make much of anything anymore. I've always been in the world of manufacturing, so I make stuff, but most people don't in the U.S. anymore. So then I started looking at another way of looking at things, which was just the whole vicious cycle of overwork and overconsumption. And I got involved with this shorter work time group, and And we have this website, swt.org, for the Shorter Work Time group. So my strategic thinking, was, well, okay, so we want to have economic conversion, and in order to have real economic conversion, we need to stop the vicious cycle of overwork and overconsumption. And
so you asked yourself questions.
I asked myself questions.
And arriving at strategic conceptions and answers.
Exactly, and so then the question is, well, what's the biggest obstacle to this vicious cycle of overwork and overconsumption? And you say to people, oh, are they just sort of greedy and they're always just trying to acquire things? Is that why they're so overworked and overconsuming? Mm-hmm. But actually, it's not true. In fact, the real problem is that American workers have very little control over their work time. For example, if you decide that you want to work fewer hours, you may actually be able to negotiate that with your employer. Most employers won't negotiate that. They'll say, sorry, you work full-time or you're out of here. But some employers may be willing to negotiate that.
Well, apparently you have worked that out with your
employer. Except that it turns out that if you do that, the health insurance company will tell the employer, sorry, you can't cover him.
Because he doesn't work, quote,
because he doesn't work full-time, yeah. And in fact, that's one definition of a fascist economy, is when a small number of corporations can dictate to other companies how they can run their business and how society will be conducted in general. And so I realized that one of the biggest strategic obstacles to shorter work time is the need for universal health care. And so back in 1994, I got involved with the group Healthcare for All, mm-hmm. and we had a Proposition 186 that would have...
So you went from wanting to cut down your hours at work.
Well, it wasn't me personally.
But this group you were in.
No. This is me. This is my thinking. These are the issues that I got involved with.
Okay.
And so when we talk about these 90% issues, mm-hmm. what I realize is that if you can solve a certain problem, then you're 90% of the way there towards solving all the other problems that you're trying to solve. I mean, it started out with, how can we stop bombing people in other countries? And now we've made a transition to talking about shorter work time, and then we've made a transition to talking about universal health care. And so the idea is, if you can solve the health care problem, you're 90% of the way towards solving the overwork and overconsumption problem.
So it's like you take that next step, it starts a whole train of changes.
Exactly. In fact, somebody should do a program called The Next Step. That would be a great idea.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
We'll do that. So another vicious cycle about overwork and overconsumption mm-hmm. is things that are just out of our control, things that we're forced to pay for and subsidize that we have no control over. And one of those is the transportation system in this country, the transportation and land use dynamic. If you Google America's autos on welfare, you will get a Sierra Club page which documents hundreds of billions of dollars a year of subsidies for private motor vehicle use, which amounts to thousands of dollars a year for every...
This is, who's doing the subsidy? Are big companies paying their workers money to drive to work? Or?
Well, the subsidies show up in many forms. Some of it is tax dollars that go to pay for infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Some of it is the fact that when you go to the store and you buy something, you're paying for those acres of parking lot in front of the store, even if you walk there.
That's part of the price.
That's part of the price that you pay.
Transportation, yeah.
Exactly. And so in civilized countries, you pay the true cost for driving. In civilized countries, gasoline